Guys, welcome back to Survivor Worldwide. It has been a long time since the finale of Australian Survivor Brains vs. Brawn back in September, but we're so close to the premiere of Australian Survivor Blood vs. Water. It is just around the corner, January 31, and oh boy, we're looking forward to it. I've got a very special guest joining me today, Robin the Inwit. Robin, g'day, how are you?
Good. How are you, Riley?
Yeah, doing very well, and counting down the days now until Australian Survivor returns. It's going to be
I got like
such a
a little
great
advent
season.
calendar. I don't use my advent calendar at Christmas. I wait till the next season of Survivor and I count down through those days.
Look, that is not a bad idea at all. I might have to go and grab one for myself because I'm
Can't
getting
get them
very
anymore,
excited at
mate.
this point.
Got to wait till
It's
next
getting
Christmas.
it's getting very, very close. And yeah, Australian Survivor with the premiere, it basically will be Christmas for us. It's going to be a smorgasbord of returnees with Sandra Diaz Twine appearing on the season as well, and some
I'm all
other
in.
familiar Australian Survivor faces.
Yes, there are. Do I agree with this? I don't know. Actually, I do know. I don't agree with it. But look, it's okay. I get by. If we've got Sandra, we got to have some the Aussie callbacks.
Yeah, and I think with Australian Survivor, we've kind of gotten used to having celebrities or returnees on the seasons at this point.
Yeah, which is look, that's the only thing my only problem with Australian Survivor is that we still need to bring back some great guests, some great returnees, and I love them, but I just feel like we've got a really good format. We've got a really good show. Let's just back it with some solid cast and keep getting some new cast members in.
Yeah, and over the years, we've seen so many great newbies come onto the show. And today, what we're going to be discussing, we're going to be recommending which Australian Survivor season should you watch, with the show just coming out on Paramount Plus. There's 6 seasons available for you guys to watch before Blood vs. Water. So we figured, why not discuss it all here today? We'll be giving a little bit of a spoiler-free review of each season, discussing the pros and the cons of each season, what to look out for, some of the big characters as well. So I'm really excited to get into it. Robin, first of all, what would your favorite season of Australian Survivor be?
Look, it has to be All Stars at the moment, just because that was a great gameplay. If you want some really good strategic gameplay, I feel like it has to be All Stars as my number one.
And I don't think it's a bad season at all. And yeah, a very dominant game. Certainly, once people get around to that, All Stars is a great season to watch. For me, 2019 Champions vs Contenders 2 was really just a cut above. And lots of great characters on that season that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Champions vs Contenders 2 would be. Yeah, look, that's that one and season 2, which I don't know, was that 2017?
Yeah, 2017.
Though, yeah, those would be my top 3 pretty easily.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Australian Survivor is there's so many great seasons, and honestly, I couldn't really pick a bad one out of the bunch. I love all of them, and that's basically what we'll be discussing today. We will be doing a tier rank later on, but first, I thought we might as well discuss the differences between Australian Survivor and US Survivor, because Australian Survivor is a little bit different to US Survivor. In Australia, we're a lot bigger and better, so we like to do things bigger and better on our version of Survivor. What are some of the things that Australian Survivor does bigger and better than US Survivor, Robin?
Well, first off, challenges. I mean, come on. We've got a great team who build our challenges, and they've just brought some great innovation. That said, I would really like us to get a bit more of a strategic element into our challenges. But we just have some really cool, unique challenges that come on into play. And I think that's huge, especially after 20 years. It's good to have something fresh and get excited about.
Yeah, and some brutal challenges as well. You see some challenges like the holding your breath underwater underneath all those barricades. That's in Australian Survivor a lot. Lots more brutal challenges as well. Even things similar to Sumo at Sea, which I think got banned from Heroes vs. Villains and San Juan del Sur. Lots of epic challenges because, I mean, they bring on a smorgasbord of celebrities on the show. And yeah, the challenges are bigger. Obviously, a cast of 24 players as well. How do you feel about that compared to 16 to 20 players in the US?
Look, I'm used to it now. We've had that even more of a downsize in 41 that just passed. We've had a downsize in players. We've had was it players and a downside in days?
Yeah.
You know what? I actually don't mind the wherever we sit, either it's 48 or 55 or 50 days, whichever we're playing. I don't mind it. I don't mind a longer game.
Yeah, I don't think it actually changes anything at the end of the day, and that's something you will see with Australian Survivor. Is it started out as 55 days, and then I think last season Brains vs Brawn was 48 days, and this upcoming season of Blood vs Water will be 47 days, but still basically double what US Survivor is at the moment at 26.
Yeah. I mean, what we have, the amount of episodes we have in Australian Survivor, is pretty much the whole season. We still not at a whole American season, but we're still not at merge. We're still just like chugging along. It's a grind.
Yeah, it's a grind, but it's a great grind because we have so many fun characters along the way. And I think the unique thing about Australian Survivor is you actually get to know a lot of the pre-merge characters. They really become huge names, and then they're voted off immediately, obviously before the merge, and then you meet almost a new batch. And I think with Australian Survivor, it's almost, I mean, obviously having 24 castaways, there's so many different stories to tell, but it almost does feel like at times there's almost 3 separate points of the game with the pre-merge and then the merge up until, say, the final 8, and then from the final 8 onwards, it really gets into the strategy. And it's so much fun all the time with all these huge characters, because really Australian Survivor has produced some big characters over the years.
We have quite a few big characters, and that's great. And that's what I feel like we've got more big characters to offer. Like we've got so more. We're only in our, hopefully, we're only in our infancy of Australian Survivor. Like every year, you never know if it's going to be renewed. So if we've got 20 seasons in Australian Survivor, who knows what we're going to come up with. We've had some really, really amazing, fun, enjoyable characters. And, you know, and you also have your duds, and that's okay.
That's, you always have your duds, but I mean, I think the duds, we love them just as much as our favorites.
You love the duds.
You know, when they don't get as much attention, they almost become darlings. But Australian Survivor has obviously had a rocky history, because back in 2001, when Borneo and the Australian Outback were at their height, Australian Survivor did trial a show back in 2001. It didn't exactly work because a lot of people were still more into US Survivor, and it was actually outrating our local version. They tried it again in 2006 with a celebrity version, which is something they love to do here in Australia. But then in 2016, finally, a new network picked it up, Network 10, and now we've run 6 seasons, coming on to our 7th season of the new format, which is great to see. And as you say, Robin, hopefully Australian Survivor is in its infancy, and I hope that all the viewers in the US will give it a new wind as well.
Yeah, and it's just like, I think when we tried it before, we didn't put the money into production value. And that's a big change. I mean, like, yes, I know with the last couple of seasons with COVID and everything, we have been in Australia, but that hasn't changed the production value. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like we're just trying to do a ripoff. We're actually putting quite a bit of money into the theming of the shows. Everything just seems really high end. Like I remember watching, because I was nervous as hell at 2016, which was one of the years I was probably closest to getting on. I was just watching it and I was petrified that it would only get 1 season because we'd sucked before. But here, when it first opened, that opening title scene, I was like, yeah, we've done it. We've done it. We've cracked it. We're here. So hopefully we're here for a lot longer.
Yeah, and I think that's something with Australian Survivor is, as we said, bigger and better. The challenges are bigger. There's 24 castaways, 48 days. It's a cinematic masterpiece, really, and you'll see that with some of the early seasons and even onto the most recent season being Brains vs Brawn. And I'm sure some people have seen the trailers for Sandra Dow's Twine coming onto this season. There is so much more hype built around Australian Survivor than there is for US Survivor, yet it only has a quarter of the budget. But it really does feel like a lot bigger of a production because they just put so much love into it, I think. And not all the money basically counts at the end of the day. Whereas I think with the US Survivor, you see the same thing every season. Australian Survivor really offers a variety every single year.
Yeah, I think I had a bit of a stalk of Sandra's Instagram today. I've never done that before in my life, I promise. But she posted up like a couple of photos of all our advertising, like the trams around Melbourne, just smashing the posters everywhere. And I think that's, it does build the hype. It builds it up quite a bit. And I think we got to keep that hype, keep that train going. And eventually we'll get to play because it'll be just going forever.
Yep, let's hope so, and yeah, hopefully you can get on the show one day. Hopefully, I can get on the show. Who knows at this
Yeah,
point?
you'll
It
beat
has
me,
been
but
a
it's
long
okay.
roller coaster with 6 seasons. But for US viewers who haven't actually watched Australian Survivor before, we're really going to run through all 6 seasons, give a quick spoiler-free review, I suppose, and kind of make comparisons. Look out for the big characters, what to expect in terms of strategy each season. And I think what we've seen over the years with Australian Survivor, starting out in 2016 and up to the most recent season, Brains vs. Brawn, is it almost has carried the same sort of strategy evolution as the strategy evolution from Borneo to Survivor 41. Because in the first season, 2016, Robin, it was very much all about mateship and integrity and, really being true blue Aussie values,
Ridiculous. That's
everyone's
what it was. It
mates.
was absolutely ridiculous, but it's understandable because a lot of people just didn't know Survivor. And like even now, we still get people, blows my mind. We still get people who go on the show who have never seen Survivor. I still see people who don't even realize American Survivor exists. So, there's a lot of fun to be had when you have such fresh and green players that have no clue.
Yeah. I think that's what happened with the 2016 season, the first season of the new Australian Survivor. A lot of players came onto the show not really knowing how to play, but then there were some characters as well who were big game players. They were massive Australian Survivor fans, but it didn't really work out in their favor because Australian Survivor was so early on in its evolution that no one really knew how the game would work. And especially with the 55-day format, you really have to approach the game a little bit differently.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's often a mistake you see still to this day by quite a lot of our few super fans that get on the show. You've got to adapt and understand that the game runs differently, the pace is different, and understand that people are different,
Mm.
and you have to mold yourself to everybody around you and be able to play your strategic game. And if you've got a great strategic game, awesome, but you have to realize you need to now fit it in with this cast of 24 that maybe 10 to 12 or maybe even more don't actually have never actually seen American Survivor, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, that's right. And it's the same with US Survivor as well. Obviously, you get a player like Jacob Derwin on Ghost Island, or Lyndon on Island of the Idols, or JD on Survivor 41, who, play a very hard game out of the gate and they're massive super fans. But
Mm.
you're right. It is very situational how you play the game of Survivor. You do need to be aware of what people know about the game around you, and, how much they know, how much strategy they know, how much strategy people are willing to take on early on. In the 2016 season, though, compared to US Survivor with Borneo, it's obviously not dated. It's very new. Around the time that Millennials vs. Gen X and Game Changers was airing, Australian Survivor 2016 first aired. And it really is just, in my opinion, a cut above anything that US Survivor has done. The cinematic quality in this season is so beautiful.
Yeah, it's and that's I come from a film background, so to see these beautiful shots, to see how well our cinematographers and the crew are just making some really amazing stuff is it's not just a stock standard. They've really gone in. It's not a cookie cutter. They've tried to really make it something massive, and they do that. I mean, they've got the time. We're 3 episodes a week, and then it gets down near the end 2 episodes a week. So there's a lot of content. But they really go to town with the shots. Beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do think they take advantage of the environment they're in, and they use it for the challenges as well. In the 2016 season, what you will see is an epic final immunity challenge, really one of the all-time great final immunity challenges, I think, and really showcasing the beauty of the environment, but also the harshness of the 55-day
Mm,
game.
yeah.
Really unbelievable how they did it. With 2016, it is set in Samoa, which is obviously a familiar location that obviously hosted Survivor Samoa in season 19, Heroes vs. Villains, and then later, I think South Pacific and One World in the US also filmed in Samoa. A beautiful location. What did you think about the cast in this season, 2016?
Look, I was never against it in this. Like, obviously, I sat there going because I know I got pretty close that year, going, "Who was me? Who is me?
Mm.
Why did they?" And that sort of stuff. The one thing I did struggle with, and there's a ridiculous clip of me on the internet bawling my eyes out when I forget his name, the guy who quit. if you
Yep.
remember that guy.
Yep.
I was devastated because I'm like, that's a spot to someone who really loves this show. So he's probably the only one that I'm like, get out of it. But we had obviously our really big super fan, Nick, was unfortunately shed in probably he's got the wrong edit to it. I don't think he should be a villain, but it's just
Mm.
when you have a cast of people who don't know the game, and someone who does, any move that looks like a strategic move becomes villainous. But overall, it was a pretty decent cast for a first season. Like, it really was.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what we said earlier, it does have a lot of clueless players who didn't really know how the game worked, but then some super fans. Nick is one of the big characters from that season. I almost do feel like he was pinned into that villain archetype, similar to a
Yeah,
Jerry Manthey in the Australian Outback, because no one else was playing around him. He
yeah,
was the one that obviously wanted to make active gameplay, but nothing ever worked out for him. Some more big characters, such as Brooke was a big character, Flick as well.
hmm,
Matt Tarrant, a similar mold to Nick as well. I suppose he's a super fan of the show.
yeah,
Although I think he fit in a little bit better. Lee Castledine was a great player as well. Lots of physical players in
yeah.
this first season.
Lee kind of, I guess, was a very, very, again, it's our first season, but I guess Matt Rogers later on plays a very Lee role, but a much better
Yep,
version of it. Like, Lee has
yep,
so many flaws. It gets him so far in the game, but it just, yeah, he just doesn't know enough about the game. He came in as one of our celebrity players. He came in as next cricketer, uh, but he was able to work the game because no one else knew. I think he was
yeah.
the one that was driving the mateship from memory.
Yeah, that's right. And I think with Lee, I'd probably compare him to like a Colby Donaldson in Survivor the Australian Outback very early on in the evolution of US Survivor. Someone who was strong in challenges, but really was maintaining that integrity the whole way through
Yeah,
and couldn't really separate the difference between the game and life outside of the game. And I think that's a delicate line that we see in Australian Survivor a
yeah,
number of times is people trying to balance the morality of what you normally do in the outside world, but playing for
the game.
$500,000. It's a massive
Yeah,
prize at stake. And what do you weigh up at the end of the day? It is a hard balance to achieve. I want to
yeah.
know, Robin, in between S and D, where would you rank Australian Survivor 2016? Thinking of S as like an elite season, like Heroes vs. Villains or a Cagayan, and D being like a Redemption Island.
I'm gonna put that one at C, I reckon.
Yep.
If
Yeah,
I
I'd
was,
probably go a high C or a low B. But I
yeah,
think you're right. C is probably the sweet spot for 2016.
yeah.
I
If
think
we're
it's a
rating
great.
them all,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's a great introduction to Australian Survivor, I think, and so many
yeah.
great characters, as we said, with Nick, Flick, Brooke, Matt, Lee.
I mean,
People really enjoy
Phoebe's
some of
one
the
of the ones
characters. Yeah,
that,
Phoebe is a big character as well that
I
I
mean,
forgot.
Phoebe was one of my
Jenna
favorites.
Louise as well was a great
Hmm.
character. I quite enjoyed
Yeah,
Jenna Louise. Lots of great characters. And I think when people are watching 2016, um, a great winner as well, I will say. A really
yeah,
unique storyline that isn't really
yeah.
seen in some other seasons. Not too dominant, but also not too under the radar.
Like, I think,
Someone that
yeah,
played a great
it's,
game.
yeah, someone who really nailed the end. Really,
Yeah.
really nailed the end. And you see people throughout the game, and I'll go to my boy Ozzy, dominates his first season, but come to
Mm,
final tribal against Yule, pathetic. He's
yeah.
absolutely atrocious in there. Whereas our winner in 16 can just really, really hammers home that final tribal. Just very, very solid.
Yeah, and I think a really enjoyable season, and seeing the characters and watching the evolution from the start, I think is an important thing with
Yeah.
Australian Survivor. You really can't go wrong with any of these seasons. And I think for someone starting out, I think 2016 is a great starting point. There's obviously better seasons, which is why we're putting it in a C tier.
Yeah.
I would say 2016 is probably on par with like a co-wrong sort of season. It's very, very middle of the road in terms of US Survivor rankings, but it's still a great season all around.
I always struggle when, like, if you've never seen it, which ones do you watch first? I
Mm,
always will say just watch them in order because you see
yeah.
so much evolution. But you know, it's a hard, these rankings are really, really hard for me to do because then you just you get to know, and then when you come to All Stars, if you were to watch All Stars first, you're watching all these people who've played before that you've never seen them play. You've never watched them evolve over the time.
Mm. Yeah, and I think with my journey through Survivor, watching US Survivor in particular, I watched some of those All Star seasons before I watched some of their original seasons.
Yeah. See, I
And
don't know that.
while I think like with Heroes vs Villains, it's great to see that payoff and have those 19 seasons underpinning it,
Yeah,
and getting the grand evolution, the Avengers Infinity War,
of course.
sort of story arc. But then again, I think starting out with an All Star season as well. I don't think it's as delegitimate as some other people say, because you get introduced to some big characters, and then that
Yeah.
incentivizes you to go back and watch those seasons that they originally aired in.
Yeah.
I really think there is no wrong way to go about Australian Survivor, especially if you're coming in this late in the game. We got 6 great seasons, and
Yeah.
it's almost the same as watching about 15 US Survivor seasons, because these seasons are
So
supersized. They are 24 episodes. Each
Yeah.
episode is 60 to 90 minutes long without ads. It really is a mammoth task, but what you will see with these seasons is they really do deliver every single episode, or I'd say maybe 22 out of the 24 episodes in each season. They really hit home. They got some great moments in them.
I mean, we do have some filler. We can cut some filler.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, of course. There's always room to cut some filler, but I think it's great. It's great watching the whole journey. 2017 is a very popular season. I often see it mentioned as being the best season.
Yeah.
I'm honestly not the biggest fan
Aren't
of
you?
2017,
Oh, that
which
was a
I get a lot
brilliant
of flack
season.
for.
Yeah, you
and
would.
the
I'm gonna
reason
give it to you.
the reason for that is the end game a little bit in 2017 let me down a little bit. There was one particular person who I wasn't the biggest fan of, and they got quite deep into the game, which soured it a little bit for me. With 2017 though,
I was going to say the only problem I had with 2017, like I still think it's an amazing season,
Mm.
but often, I guess, similar to, in my mind, 41 that just passed, and probably a few other seasons, a lot of big players, a lot of big personalities, a lot of all this sort of stuff, they're so big and so in your face that you have no other option but to take them out. And when you start knocking out your favorites, you end up with a pretty weak remaining few in the end. So I hear what you're saying there.
Yeah,
But
no,
still,
I actually don't think
brilliant
I don't
season.
think there are weak people at the end. I think the winner is a great character, a great player, and the 4th place finisher as well was one of my favorites as well. But I think this season, you're right. A lot of the big characters, they don't last until the end. But we do get to know some really big characters. Obviously, Jericho is there, and there's a great story arc with how he lobbies all his allies to join him in his conquest to the $1 million prize. You've got Luke Toki, who is a massive fan favorite, and he will return in later seasons. AK as well is
he's like our potential Rupert in the early days. He had such a huge following.
I would say Luke is
completely
your
different.
Rupert.
Nothing like Rupert at all.
Different. Yeah,
But the popularity
I'd say Luke is likened. I think he's most similar to a Tony Vlachos, but obviously,
his game's very
with his notoriety within Australian Survivor, and I suppose comparing it to the early seasons of US Survivor, he probably is that Rupert figure, or maybe a Colby Donaldson figure, given they're both massive stars from the second season. But Luke Toki really is Australian Survivor's darling. I would say he's the poster boy. And if you were to build a Mount Rushmore or whatever other Mount Survivor in Australia, I think Luke Toki would be one of those names that is carved into the mountain. You do get some other great characters, like an AK is a big character. Zen Hen as well is a very popular character who I think a lot of US Survivor fans will like as well.
Yeah. He was our token, long-haired, Malcolm Joe style character. I think he was trying to fill that void. But I loved it. High. I rate that one very high.
Yeah, and I would agree, but I think there are, I mean, in the context of this ranking, I think there are a lot better seasons, in my opinion, at least.
I'd probably I'll put it at number 2, baby.
Okay,
chuck it in.
I'm going to put it at number 3 for now.
What we can do, you're the boss. You outrank me.
We'll pop it into A for now. I will say though,
it can go B. It can go B.
I will say I acknowledge the I acknowledge what everyone loves in the season. For me, it just felt a little bit cheap by who got to the end. I'm going to put it in A. It gets a lot of praise. A lot of people say that 2017 is the first season you should watch.
If I put that in A, then where does Champs Contenders 2 go?
And we can figure this out down the line.
Chuck it into B.
We can figure this out. All right, we'll put it in B for now. What I will say though is 2017. I hear a lot of people saying 2017 is the season you should watch first, and I actually think it is probably the best starting point in my opinion, because
I'd say that too.
There's no returnees on this season, and really the only spoiler you're going to get is the first 5 minutes of the season. And the thing with Australian Survivor is, as I said before, heroes versus villains being the Avengers Infinity War of US Survivor. I think every single season of Australian Survivor, it really has that post-credit scene spoils the next movie, that sort of thing. But it's the opposite in Australian Survivor. The first opening scene in each Australian Survivor season spoils the previous season, which is a massive flaw. So I think if you are watching a season and you're not going in a chronological order, I think it's definitely worthwhile just skipping the first 5 minutes and picking up from there, because you will get major spoilers if you do watch the whole thing. I think it's been the case in All Stars and 2021.
I don't remember this at all.
Every season. But something to keep in mind. We'll pop 2017 in the B tier for now. I really do think though 2017 is probably the best season to start with, even though it's not my favorite Australian Survivor season. I think Luke Toki being the Rupert of Survivor, as we said,
so popular.
He's the biggest character, and you will learn to love him, and you want to watch all the rest of the seasons just to see him.
Yeah, Luke's such a great. Yeah, he was definitely pulled the most. I don't think anyone so far can bring in the amount of popularity as Luke has over his seasons.
Yeah, and I think Luke has really achieved a massive level of notoriety. I would say within the Australian Survivor community, and looking at what he's achieved outside of the game in terms of his starting, not starting out as a celebrity, he almost has become sort of that Boston Rob figure that everyone will say, really that's Luke from Survivor. I know who that is. Didn't
he just win Big Brother All Stars or something?
Yes, yep.
Like, I don't watch it, but
Luke Toki just won Big Brother VIP with a couple of other celebrities. I think Omarosa was on it. Caitlyn Jenner was on it. A very eclectic mix of celebrities. But Luke Toki does have that level of celebrity status in Australia from appearing on the show. And I do think, 2017 a great starting point for anyone that is looking for a big character. I think once you see Luke Toki, you'll never go back.
There is some where you don't get strategy in 2016, you get it in 17.
Yeah, I will say that I think 2018 is probably the turning point, and there is a particular vote in 2018 where I think the evolution of Australian Survivor from a game of mateship to a game of strategy takes a massive step. And I think 2018, it doesn't get too much credit. One thing with 2018 is it does have a former US Survivor on it. The theme is champions versus contenders. And as part of that, the champions are basically the celebrity tribe. So we see Matt Rogers, who was a former NRL player, Brian Lake, who was a former AFL player, Shane Gould, an Australian darling Olympic swimmer, and a very familiar face for US Survivor fans, Russell Hantz, the runner-up of Samoa and Heroes vs. Villains, being branded as a champion, the people's champion of US Survivor.
I love Russell, but he is not a champion. He hasn't won the game. He can't be considered a champion.
Yeah, that's right. And I think for Russell fans, for Russell Hantz fans, I would say 2018 isn't the best starting point for your Australian Survivor journey. 2018 does have some big characters, though. I think it is very underrated. 2018 for me is sort of like the Guatemala of Australian Survivor, because it's a forgotten season. People don't look at it as much. But I think it actually played a massive role in the evolution of strategy within Australian Survivor, and also looking at the characters. You had some big characters. Benji Wilson was a huge character. Shawnee Fairfax, by far. I think if you're looking at Luke Toki as the token male survivor in Australia, Shawnee is the Parvati of Australian Survivor.
Yeah, Shawnee's our Parvati for sure.
Absolutely. And some other characters on that season. You got Shane, as we said. Sean Booms is a great character as well. Lots of great characters. And I think, you do see Russell Hantz, but Russell Hantz is not the main attraction of this season.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big Russell fan. Like I love him in his first 2 seasons. I absolutely adore like that. He is the best villain that Survivor has ever produced. Maybe, I mean, Fair Play. You'd have to talk, but I think it has to go to Russell. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, he's not a champion. He's proven himself over that he does 2 amazing seasons, flawless, but he doesn't evolve. He doesn't evolve his gameplay. And fourth time round in Australian Survivor, he just shows he isn't a champion, unfortunately, which is, I had big hopes for him. I was really hoping he'd be able to do something, but he didn't change a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. It is unfortunate. If you're a Russell fan, I'd say miss it. If I was to rank 2018 though, I would probably put it in the lower end of B tier, just behind 2017, I'd say.
Gotcha. See, that's my lowest ranking one. Like if,
Yeah.
I might put it above 2006. I'd probably put it above 2016 because there's some great characters. There's some really awesome characters, but I just don't think it hit as hard as coming off 2017, which was a big high of a season. 2018 fell flat for me.
Yeah.
Even with some amazing characters, some like Yashoni was, I love her. She's so good. She's just such a powerhouse. Benji, like everyone wants to see Benji again. There's some great characters, but just, I don't know. I think 17 really set the pace and 18 slowed it down again.
Yeah, well, I actually disagree with that. I would say that 2018 accelerated the pace because the pre-merge was a little bit slow, but once it got to the merge, there was a particular vote there where someone was going to play an idol and they told the person that was going to play the idol not to play it. I thought that was a ballsy Survivor move, which is honestly a very undercredited move, I think. And I think from there, it did accelerate the strategy of Australian Survivor, and it made people wake up and say, well, hang on, I can make moves, I can lie, cheat, and steal, and I can still be loved at the end of the day by the audience. I think it was a crossing line for Australian Survivor.
Gotcha.
Above or below 2016, in your opinion?
Above 16. Above 16
right.
For sure. Just because there's
bottom of the B tier.
Cool.
All right. This next season,
I thought they were only allowed to have one. I thought they were only allowed to be in one of their one slot. You can chuck a few in there. Great. Cool.
We've got 6 seasons.
That's true.
We'll figure it out. I mean, I think the thing with Australian Survivor, there's no bad seasons. It's not like you've got a Redemption Island or a Thailand in there. All of these seasons really rank mid-tier in US Survivor, honestly. I do think every season really hits.
This is true. This is why I have more excitement. Unfortunately, I have more excitement for an Australian season than an American season, because the American season, I'm like, what am I going to get? What's happening now? So you're right. Like everything is really solid so far with our 6.
Yeah, and I do wonder if that is because you have the bigger cast, which leaves you with less room to miss in terms of having, some standout candidates. And again, having longer days, you get those bigger challenges. There just seems to be a lot more entertainment. And I think it's so padded out, you can't really be overshadowed by one or two incidents, like with Philip in Redemption Island and the whole Rice Wars situation, like with Thailand, with Brian and Ted Gandia. There's so many different scenes that you can't really have one overshadow all the rest, because there's so many episodes to get through that it can't be weighed down by anything, I think. And I think that's why every season really is solid, because you get some dud episodes, but the ones that hit well are just exceptional top tier Survivor.
It's very
and I think the prime example of that, 2019 Australian Survivor for me, if I can say it, Robin, I think it goes straight to S tier. 2019 is the number one season Australian Survivor for me.
It was very good season. It was a brilliant season, because that was like, I remember going, oh no, they're doing champions versus contenders again. Again, for us people, we've had 2 seasons that have fresh players, and even them, they're scattering them with like a celebrity and Instagrammer. They're scattering them with those. Then we get champions versus contenders, which takes out half the cast, and then they do it again, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And not far along, like I remember going, don't, like when it was casting, I'm like, don't do another one. But then I really got on board. I wanted 3 of them. I wanted a contender to come. I wanted like 1-1 and then come in. Sorry, I almost gave us too much of a spoiler away. I was like, I thought we were going for this three-peat, and I got behind it. I really did.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Great season.
I
Chuck it
actually
in S.
I was the same as you. As a fan, I was disappointed that Champions vs Contenders 2 happened because it did limit,
Until it
as you said, the
starts.
casting pool.
Oh,
But I really do think Champions vs Contenders, having that as a trilogy, I would have
yeah,
loved
I'm
to.
so
I would have
sad
loved
it
to have seen
wasn't.
it, and I had
Yeah,
the exact same idea to you.
yeah.
And yeah, I think with this season, you do see a returnee from Australian Survivor 2017, that being the one we mentioned before, Luke Turkey, who
Yeah,
really is our star of the show.
yeah.
He returns on the Champions tribe. You also have some other big characters. Pia Miranda is a prominent actress in Australia.
Yeah.
She's on this season. Janine Alice is a prominent businesswoman. You also have, who else do we have on the season? David Gannett is a huge character on this season.
Yeah.
And
If there's a second
similar to a
Luke, it's
Luke and a
Dave.
Shawnee. Yeah, he
Yeah.
is a massive character.
Yeah,
You'll also
big,
see in the
big
Contenders
character.
tribe. Harry Hills as well is a great character as well that really emerges. And I think that's the strength of 2019 that puts it so far above the other seasons, in my opinion,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the cast is so strong. I really think,
So strong.
especially the cast in the end game.
Yeah.
Actually, there probably are a lot of duds in the pre-merge. I will acknowledge that. But once it gets to the post-merge, they're so dominant.
And the joy, I guess, is having these duds when you have such a large cast. These champions that have come on for the cash grab that sit down over the end and lay down. You don't see anything from them. It doesn't matter because you've got so many other cast members. It's like, oh, they're voted out now. I don't care. But that was a top tier season for sure.
S tier season, would you say?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Now that I know we can put multiples in a row for sure.
Yeah. I would say, if you're starting out, I would say 2017 is still the best starting point. Purely for 2016 or 2017. 2016 if you're going chronologically. 2017 if you want a big hit straight away. Want to see big characters.
You can easily skip 2016 just if you're a fan and you want some strategy, because you're not going to get it in 16, but then you're going 17, 18, 19. You have to do those back to back.
Yeah.
And you have to.
2019 is probably where I think Australian Survivor makes another big leap in strategy. I think the season after, though, is the biggest leap in strategy you will see, because it really is a strategy-heavy season and some great moves in that season.
Amazing.
2020 Australian Survivor All-Stars. It is a great season in my view. You get some classic characters from the first 4 seasons. So some highlights obviously being David from 2019, Harry from 2019 as well. He returns. You get characters like Nick and Flick and Brooke and Phoebe from 2016. You get from 2017, you get AK, you get Zen Hen. Tarzan, who was a massive character as well, returns from 2017. And 2018.
How do you remember all this? This is crazy.
It's all in the brain, isn't it? And Tarzan, a great character, I would say. 2018 as well had some great returnees from that season. Shawnee, who we mentioned before, as being a figurehead of the season. And Sean was another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and Matt Rogers as well returns from this season. So lots of big characters.
And you know what? Matt Rogers' growth is awesome. It's really awesome. So big fan.
I will say, I would have preferred to see a different cast. I do think there were some players missing from 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019.
Who would you have brought in?
And mind you, this season was filmed right after Champions vs Contenders 2. So you had some characters like a Janine and a Pia from 2019 who I would have loved to have seen.
I would have loved Pia back.
Luke, obviously, because he played just before, he'd already played twice. He wasn't included on the season, sadly. But I do think he gets some great characters. No question.
Personally, even though I loved the season, this goes back to the original Champions versus Contenders and then backing it up. You know, we unfortunately don't get to have that trilogy of them. So they go to All Stars. And for me, even though I know in US, I think All Stars hits at 8, I was like, we've had so much returns that we don't have enough All Stars yet. Like, that's where I first went, but I love the season. Even though there are people, I'd agree that I'd switch some out and put some new people in for sure, some other people in for sure.
Well, with Australian Survivor All Stars, with it being season 5, we had 94 castaways to pick from.
Yeah.
US Survivor, and I'm doing the calculations on the run here. They had 128 castaways to pick from. So yeah, not the widest casting pool, but I still think all of those characters, they're definitely returning material. They all delivered.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great season. It's an S season for me. 19 and 20 were just 2 great seasons. Love them.
I think I might put it at the top of A. Only reason I say that is because it being a returnee season, while it is great, I'd say to start off, probably not the best season to start with, because you do get spoiled obviously on a couple of winners. Similar to a Survivor All Stars, there is a dominant strategy whereby some particular people are targeted, which can spoil you a little bit.
And that's the other thing. Like, I can see, I loved it, but I know a friend of mine was talking about Survivor Winners at War, and as much as I loved, because these were at the same time, and I was like, great, amazing, like a great dominant strategy all the way through. Same with Winners at War, we have a great dominant strategy all the way through, and I can see how some people will be like, well, one person's just controlling the whole game. Like, it might not be as enjoyable, but I loved it.
Yeah, and I think that is something you'll see with Australian Survivor All Stars. It is almost like a Russell Hanson Survivor Samoa, in which there is a one player playing the game really at the end of the day, and everyone else is revolving their game around him or her. But yeah, I think it's a great season with a great winner, but it is very dominant. And if you're not a fan of this character, it might unseat it a little bit for you.
There is no way that you can't be a fan of him.
I can't see why you wouldn't. They are a massive character. But yeah, as I say, I think the drawback with 2020 All Stars is that you do get spoilers from the previous 4 seasons.
That's true.
So I would say it's not the best starting point. Although I would say that the last season we got, which is Brains vs Brawn in 2021, I would actually say that's a great starting point as well. Obviously, yes, it's the newest, but it's set in the Australian outback, which I think is a setting that a lot of US Survivor fans will love, seeing as it's not Samoa or Fiji where Australian Survivor always films, and US Survivor as well, obviously. I think it offers a unique setting and a great cast as well.
Great cast. It wasn't a bad season at all. The next, and it's we don't have returnees, do we? No, there's no returnees.
No returnees, but hopefully we do see some of these castaways come back in the future, because
for sure.
There are some heavy hitters.
There are,
and I'm sure if anyone has watched Australian Survivor Brains vs Brawn, I only need to say King George, and instantly people will be raptured. He really is such a big character. I would say on par with the Luca or David in terms of being a poster boy for Australian Survivor.
It's the thing about George is, or King George, sorry, George, is that the joy about him is so many people, episode 1 hate him.
Yep.
And then maybe some people still hated him till midway. Maybe some people hated him all the way through. But he had so many people, like the flack he got online in episode 1 to where he was so popular. It's so great to see such a shift, you know?
Yeah, that's right. And I almost would say it's almost like what we saw with Jerry Manthe from All Stars to Heroes vs. Villains. She was so hated and then became so loved. And I was one of those George haters in the preseason. And in fact, I carried it all the way through to the end almost, because there was someone I was rooting for over him. But I will acknowledge George. I love him as a character. I really do.
Yeah, he's a great character.
Watching it in retrospect, I think just the way he went about it, he played such a sloppy game, I will say. But it was also a great game and very entertaining. It really was at the same level of intensity as like a Tony Vlachos was playing. He was always ready to go. He was always willing to make moves and do whatever it took to get off the bottom.
And if you know what, if you there's 2 ways you want to go about it. Obviously, you want to win. That's obviously one step you want to do, but you can go in there, win it, and not be remembered.
Yeah.
The thing is, and you probably won't play again. George, regardless of whether he wins or doesn't win, you want him back. And he's playing again. He's playing at least one more time for sure.
Yeah.
Like,
undoubtedly, I think if he wants to, George is Definitely, I think the number one person that has to come back at this point, especially coming off All Stars with a lot of players getting their second chance. George really is a great character, and you do get some other great characters. I will say Hayley Leak is a brilliant Survivor player.
Yeah, she's a great.
You also get players like Flick. Flick was a great character. Also, the likes of Emmett and Simon as well. I think with what we didn't acknowledge with All Stars, that was the turning point for Australian Survivor in terms of strategy. That was a very strategic game, and we do see a lot of that spill over into this season. Lots of strategy going about, lots of massive blindsides and history being made in this season.
Yeah, but we also have the struggle of we see this weird struggle that I find where you have the players who now we're getting more people who know Australian Survivor. If they haven't known American Survivor, we're now starting to see more strategy come in, but we still have that clear divide where blows my mind. We have someone who hasn't watched the show at all.
Yeah.
Even though you were cast and you had a year to watch it because of COVID delays, still goes on the island or goes into the outback not knowing anything. And so that becomes really hard to play with when you've got most people who want to play the game and some people who you've still got this small little cluster that you have to work around. And there we unfortunately see some mistakes being made from some great players not able to bring in these people who have no idea how the game works.
Yeah, I do think with Australian Survivor, you do get a lot of characters who are obviously celebrities outside of the game. So there might be ex-football players or politicians or whatever it may be. And you also get a lot of people wanting to do it for fame because, Australian reality television is huge over here. If you make it big on reality TV, you're going places. I do think Australian Survivor has a lot more recognition from the wider community than US Survivor does. And it really is like US Survivor was in the old days. With someone like a Colleen Haskell or an Elizabeth Filarski that went on the show and became superstars overnight. You don't see that as much with Australian Survivor, but you do see a lot of these players outside of the game. They do get a lot of recognition from the broader community for being a Survivor player. And I suppose that does come from having your face plastered on all these billboards around the cities.
Exactly. For me, I put that in there. Like I put it in a high A. There was some sloppiness that bothered me. But some moves that just I was a bit frustrated by, but it's a high A for me.
Yeah, I agree. I'd put it behind All Stars.
Yeah, on par.
I'd probably sandwich it in between All Stars and 2017. I'd say.
Yeah.
I
feel like that's where it had to be.
Yeah, I think it's a great season. And again, you're not going to go wrong with any of these seasons.
No, you're not.
The thing with Australian Survivor, though, and Brains vs. Brawn in particular, there are a lot of twists. There are so many new twists that are trialed throughout the game. Similar to a do or die twist or an hourglass twist you'll see in Survivor 41. You do get some similar instances in Australian Survivor.
You do get the occasional twist, and you do definitely get a twist which you need to counter. You need to know that at some point in time there might be one or two fake votes, like you're not going home vote outs. But they seem to be standard now, and they don't really ruin the game, and they're not manipulating the game to show a move. Whereas the do or die, the hourglass, the read it or not read it that we saw in 41 are really trying to funnel our players down a certain path. Whereas our twists are like, I don't feel like the Australian twists are damaging yet.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there. What you said about winners and having to play around different personalities who haven't seen the show. And also to that end, you're right. You do have to expect the twist because Australian Survivor does have a lot of twists. Usually they come around. Usually you'll get one at like the final 8, and usually you'll get one at like probably in the 10 to 12 position. And you might see a non-elimination Redemption Island
pre-merge,
sort of twist.
Or
pre-merge as well. You might see a player being voted out onto another tribe.
And
you get all these twists, which you have to counter for them. You have to know when they're coming. And I think a super fan will recognize when they're going to come and play their game around those. But then again, they can bite you in the ass as well.
It definitely can. But as long as you're sitting there knowing that, well, something has to happen sooner or later, because we have seen a couple of players who they actually may make big moves at the wrong time when a twist happens, and in return, that person that they get voted out ends up being a really strong beneficiary of that twist.
Yeah, and
but
we
it's
might have
destroying.
to have a discussion at some point about how to win Australian Survivor, because it is very different to US Survivor. Maybe we'll do that
Yeah.
after you and I both win the show, and we'll discuss it from there. But you're right. There are a lot of things with Australian Survivor, and the game is played a lot differently. And as people go through and watch all 6 seasons, I think you'll see that the winners of Australian Survivor win in a very, very different fashion to a US Survivor winner. They're oftentimes not the biggest players, because those big players get targeted mid-merge. With it being 50 days, there's a lot more room for error, and a lot more room for you to lose immunity and get voted out. So you're not going to see a player like a Ricardo or a Mike Holloway sneak all the way to the end. You're going to get that chance to get rid of them earlier in the game.
Yeah.
I think I feel pretty comfortable with this ranking. In fact, to say that's almost spot on, 2019 is definitely, in my opinion, 2019 is the top season. And certainly for a newbie wanting to get that level of strategy that really, is on par with US Survivor strategy, mixed in with some big characters. I think 2019 is definitely the go-to, because 2016 and 2017, while they do have some strategy, 2017 in particular, I'd say 2016 especially is let down a lot by this mateship and integrity line.
Yeah, for sure. 2016 is that's the, unfortunately, you don't see gameplay. You see a couple of people really trying, but they're just like, the oxygen is taken away from that fire, and it's just nothing. It just dies really quickly.
Yeah, we're still waiting. We're still waiting for Sue's big move. One day, maybe it will come. Who knows when it will arrive? But hopefully, with Australian Survivor Blood vs. Water, we get to see lots more content. Overall, though, Robin, what would you say would be, if you were recommending Australian Survivor to a new fan, what season would you go to?
Look, honestly, I would possibly a new fan. Like, I could just, unfortunately, just take out 16 and just go chronologically from 17. That's how I'd probably do it, because you get that nice, a little bit of strategy, a really great cast in 17, and overall, like I said, apart from yourself, people put that in a top 10 season across all survivors, like as the US included. So it's a strong season to start with. Then you got your champion contenders, where you do have a heavy celebrity element, which is not in 17, and it's okay, but you have this nice little battle going into All Stars. And then you kind of, I would like to assume 2020, our Brains vs. Brawn, which is the only thing I have a problem with Brains vs. Brawn, is there was nothing really that gave the Brains the advantage. It was always, all those challenges were so Brawn heavy, which probably brings it down a peg for me, but it's still it's a nice coming of age. We've gone through this, and Brains vs. Brawn is like, this is, we're here to stay.
Yeah, that's right. And I actually would agree with you. Skip 2016. If you want to start with it, but just be wary. The first 5 minutes of 2017 will spoil that 2016 ending. And obviously All Stars will spoil a little bit of that as well. But
I mean, you can
once you become familiar with the players, you can come back and watch it.
But this is the thing.
I don't think Survivor is affected by being spoiled, honestly, because I feel even if you know the winner, you still, at the end of the day, you get to see all these fun characters and how they get there in the end.
Yeah, so it's a nice season, but it can be skipped. It can be. Like, and it's not a memorable season. It's just it's a nice starting point. Whereas there's nothing big that you sit there and you're like, whoa, that happened. There's no Parvati pulling all these idols out of the place, or any of these amazing moves, and the storylines that you get with the, like that you mentioned before, the little gathering the troops using a certain tool. You don't get any of that. And you get a winner that deserved to win in a strange, brand new season, but a lot of people weren't happy with it.
I think the winner of 2016, and I'd say 2018 as well, probably not the strongest winners. I'd say with the other 4 seasons, though, you do get some very, very top tier winners. Who played in very different ways, I think, to a lot of US Survivor players. But yeah, certainly with Australian Survivor, you can't go wrong. I would say 2017, as much as I don't like the end game, in particular the final three, I would say it is a great starting point. You do get some big characters, Luke Toki especially, one of the highlights of Australian Survivor. I really don't think you can go wrong. And January 31, once it rolls around, Australian Survivor Blood vs. Water is so close. We're less than 2 weeks away now, I think.
Yeah, super keen. So what are we doing? Are we just going to be recapping that every week?
Yeah, that's right. Well, on Reality Pop, we will be doing a weekly recap of Australian Survivor Blood vs. Water, which I'm really looking forward to. And obviously with Sandra Diaz-Twine playing Australian Survivor for the first time, she will have a task to outlast Russell Hantz, who competed on 2018. So whether she can do it remains to be seen.
Yeah, he didn't last very long. So hopefully he definitely wasn't the first out. So that's my only spoiler.
Yeah, and I would say with Sandra Diaz-Twine, I do actually see Australian Survivor suiting her well. And I was saying
and this theme, Blood vs. Water theme, I think is going to really help her. It's going to really aid her quite a lot.
That's right. And I think you could see something like what happened with Boston Rob and Amber in Winners at War, whereby Nina, being Sandra's daughter, gets targeted early on. I honestly don't see it happening because we do have a lot of recruits. So I don't think the level of strategy will be as developed in this season, honestly. I am worried a little bit about the strategy in this season, but I think Sandra is going to come in underestimated.
I think I have a feeling that with Australian Survivor, we've got a couple of returnee Australian players coming in. I have a feeling that they'd be targeted more or first over Sandra. I don't know, but that's my gut instinct. I think Sandra and Nina are going to go pretty far.
Yeah,
I'm just hoping. Yeah. I'm just hoping.
No, really. I honestly don't disagree with you. I do think that this could be the first time we see Sandra on a jury, because I don't think she's winning at all. But I do think Sandra has the capacity to make the merge, and
I'm calling it.
I must say,
I'm calling it now.
Sandra,
she's the winner.
I think Sandra is going to do a lot better than people expect in the challenges. I do think people are going to actually recognize Sandra as a completely different player on this season. We've seen her time and time again in Game Changers and Winners at War. She has built her game. She's played a lot more aggressively. I think she's going to take a similar approach in Australian Survivor. And I do think the physical aspect of her game will probably be the most improved. And I'm really curious to see how she goes.
Her, as long as it isn't me approach, I really like. We did see it. I don't remember the season. You do. It's probably Game Changers with the little sugar gate.
Yep.
She could definitely pitch other people against each other, and I see her doing that pretty successfully in our season because no one's done that yet in our season, so it's going to catch them off guard.
Yeah, that's right. Completely agreed. Australian Survivor Blood vs. Water, January 31. And as Robin said there, we will be recapping it on this channel. We will have some very special guests lined up as well, joining us to recap the episodes, which I'm really looking forward to. So certainly stay tuned to the channel in the lead up to Australian Survivor Blood vs. Water to find out when we will be recapping the episodes, because I am so looking forward to having some more Survivor on our screens. And it really has only been about a month since US Survivor finished, but it feels like way too long.
I was left a little flat with 41. So I need this excitement. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. Bring it on.
Yeah. The advent calendar is almost empty.
Yeah,
so really looking forward to Australian Survivor, Blood vs. Water, coming back very soon. Robin, thank you very much for coming on. Is there any social media or anything like that you'd like to plug?
Look, it's a weird one. I have so many different things. You can always find me on Instagram on One More Rob. Otherwise, I have my little Survivor channel, The Inwits. It used to be two of us. It's now just me, but I'm here now. All my acting stuff, Revolving Door Productions. There's too much to plug for me. You plug yourself.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course, my channel on YouTube, Snuffed. Of course, if you haven't already subscribed to Reality Pop, because as we said, we will be recapping all the episodes of Australian Survivor Blood vs. Water. There'll also be more exit interviews from Survivor 41, more post-game deep dives coming up on the channel as well. So definitely stay tuned for all of that. And we'll see you when Australian Survivor Blood vs. Water premieres at the end of the month.
Weeks.
See you all soon, bud. See you all soon.
Catch up.
Bye.